So in this video I want to look at how the Alde 303 heating is controlled by the Swift control panel. I've learnt a few things over a few years that we've had an Alde heating system and the Swift control panel, so I'd like to share those tips with you and I hope you find it useful. So first of all, the Swift control panel is the controller for the Alde, and you shouldn't need to turn the Alde panel on or off with the on-off switch here at all. You shouldn't need to touch this really. The Swift command panel tells the Alde what to do, so if the heating needs to come on, the Swift command panel will send a control to the Alde to turn it on. So best to use this controller and certainly not try and use another control at the same time. If I do press something on here and I go into one of the menus, you'll see there's a message comes up there that says master controller busy. It's only when I come out of there that that message will go away. In fact, if I go into here and I try and adjust the heating, you can see I'm tapping the thing to increase the temperature and it's doing nothing, and that's because this one is the main control. So do bear that in mind as we go through this. They can communicate via something called a CAN bus, so it's like a network, and sometimes this falls off the network and stops talking, or this stops communicating with that. There's a couple of things you can do if that happens. One is to switch everything off. So let's do that. My Sargent power supply unit is under the bench here. A few switches on it. That's the system shutdown, which I'll look at in a minute. That tells you you've got reverse polarity. If you plug into a main socket on the Continent, a 2-pin socket, they don't seem to worry about polarity. What this does is it tells you you've got reverse polarity and actually changes it round to the correct polarity. That's for switching your charger on, that charges your battery, and that's for switching the heating and hot water on, in our case the Alde. And if I switch that off, the heating will go off, funnily enough. But this, if I press the button, it's a toggle switch, and that switches everything off. And we'll leave it for about 20 seconds and then we'll switch it back on. And then you'll see the main logo screen come up. I've nicely got my logo on here, thanks Sargent for that update, but you normally see the Swift logo on there. And I'm going to leave this for another 20 seconds before I switch it on. You've got to remember that there's some program running in the background on here, and it basically needs to boot up and be ready for operation. So press the power button and everything comes back on. It's gone straight to the alert screen because I've got no fresh water in the tank. But you notice the Alde screens come on as well. Now this quite often happens. You see the time is flashing on there. And what that tells me is that although this has started up and it's switched the Alde on, the two are not communicating properly yet. And if I try and change the temperature on here, it does nothing over there. So a solution to this, and it normally is fairly easy to do, is you go to the clock, you go to set the clock, which is this little clock symbol. Just increase the time or something like that. Tick the button there, and you notice the times come up on there now. I now know the two are talking. That often happens if the power's gone off. If you don't isolate the system, you don't normally have that problem, but it's just something to bear in mind. You need to make sure that that's got a time on it and the time's the same as this, and you know the two are communicating with each other. The next thing is in the heating screen, you notice you've got actual temperature there and you've got target temperature there. This unit has its own sensors, and the sensors for the Swift control panel are down by the Sargent power supply. So that actual temperature is the temperature down at the power supply area, not the actual temperature in the room, which is interesting. So how does the heating know what temperature it is? Well, the Alde fortunately has its own sensors. It's got two sensors in our case. There's one behind the Alde panel. That's the default temperature sensor behind the Alde panel itself. And what that's saying there is it's measuring 14.5 degrees. Notice it's different from that, which is in a different place. However, to set the temperature for the heating, you do use a control from the Swift control panel, and you've got the adjustment there for the target temperature, and you can change that. And if you notice, as I'm changing that, it should be changing it on that as well. There's a little delay before it responds, but there you go. So this is in control of the target temperature, but the Alde is measuring the actual temperature, and that's important. This temperature here on the Swift control panel is really only for indication purposes, and where you'll see it appear is here, 13 degrees. It's also got an external, this has got an external temperature monitor which monitors obviously the temperature. There is a temperature sensor behind the chassis in the middle of the van, and that's the temperature outside. But that temperature there is only to tell us an indication of what the temperature is. The real temperature is there as measured by one of the temperature sensors. There are two temperature sensors, like I say, one behind here, and the other one, in our case, is in the bedroom. And it's this thing here. I don't know if you can see that on the GoPro, but that's got an Alde symbol on it. That is the temperature sensor in the bedroom. Now, for that to come into operation, there's a switch next to it, and you'll put that switch down, and that will measure the temperature in the bedroom, which could well be different. So it's now saying the temperature in the bedroom is 13 degrees, which is a bit closer actually to what the temperature is down by the power sensor. Let me just go and switch the bedroom sensor off, and it's now saying it's 14.5 degrees. So how on earth do you know what the correct temperature is? Well, I've got an external thermometer, and if you can see that, that's saying it's 13.8. So 13.8 around here now. Bear in mind it's not the bedroom temperature, it's the temperature behind this panel, so that may be different as well. But if I go into the menu on the Alde panel, I know I said don't use the menu on here, and you press it again, you get to the settings screen, press that button at the top to get to the second of the menus, press sensor calibration, and you can adjust the temperature here, and you see it says -3 degrees. That's the offset temperature as it's known, and you can adjust that till you get it a bit more accurate according to this. Now this, I've got to admit, you do end up playing with this a little bit and adjusting it. That now says 13.5, which is closer to that. So that's saying 13.5, and that's saying 13.9. So it's probably closer to that. Again, if I go back to the Swift control panel, that's saying 13, that's saying 13.5. So you will get differences, because you've got three sensors really. This one behind the panel, this one for the power supply and the Swift control panel itself, and the bedroom sensor in our case. And they can all read slightly differently because they're all in slightly different places. But like I say, this is the temperature there where it says 13 degrees. That's the one that tells the Alde what the temperature should be. Now at the moment with this control panel I've got it on manual, which means I can adjust the temperature here. I could have it off, and that of course switches the heating off logically. Whenever you switch it back on, it sets the target temperature to the minimum 5 degrees. So you will need, if you just want to use it manually, you will need to adjust it there. I've got the water heating here. I've got no water in here, so I can't leave the water heating on, but just for demonstration purposes, I can have it on normal, or I can have it on boost. And boost I would use if I need to heat the water up quickly. Someone else has been using the shower, or it's not very hot, or it's not had time to heat up, those sort of things. I don't tend to use the boost that much. Down here we've got the energy source. Now two buttons here. This one controls the electricity energy source, and that one controls the gas. And you've got 3 settings for the energy source: 3 kilowatts, off, 1 kilowatt, or 2 kilowatts. You can use gas at the same time as well, so that gives you some extra heating as well. So if you need to heat the van up in a bit of a hurry, you can put it on 3 kilowatts and electricity, and I think that gives you a total of 6 kilowatts. I'll check that, I'll let you know if that's correct. The other button to look at is the timer. So if I hit the timer button here, notice it's changed the water heating there. Now to check what the timer is set on, click this arrow over here, and it takes you to the timer screen. And you've got various settings in here, and you can set the time that you want it to come on. You've got 4 settings, and you can change those settings, time, hour and minute here. Different settings at different times, so 7 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 6:30 or 2200, 10 o'clock. Over here is the air heating temperature, so 21 degrees I've got it set. I can change it up. It only goes up, unfortunately, so if you go past the setting that you want, you have to keep pressing it. And probably have it on 21. The same for the other ones down there. Normal, that's the water heating, or boost, as we had earlier on the manual setting, or off. I'm going to leave it on normal. So at 7 o'clock, I want the heating to come on, heat the air to 21 degrees and water temperature normal. 22 degrees and normal for 11 o'clock, 21 degrees and normal for 4:30, and in the evening I can turn it down a little bit, down to 17, and I don't need the water heater at night. When you've changed all your settings, confirm them by pressing the tick button, and that's your timer settings done. It really is that simple. It's just figuring out what settings you want on here. Now there's a question mark up here, and that takes you to the help screen. So if none of this makes any sense, you can have a read of this, and you've got how to set the timers in there. And all of these screens have a help function on them. I'm going to put it back on manual, and I'm going to take the water heater off because I don't really need it heating water because I've got no water in the boiler, so I shouldn't really have it on normal. So when we're plugged in at home, I tend to have it set on down to 10 degrees just to keep the heating ticking over and keep the cold out of the van, keep the damp out of the van, and on 2 there. And that's my normal setting when we're at home in the winter. Obviously in the summer we can turn everything off. It's as simple as doing that. There's a couple of other settings you need to know about on the Alde panel. I know I said control everything from here, but there are some settings on here. If I press the menu button once and twice it takes me into the Alde menu. Honestly, you don't need to change many of these, nothing really to do. There are some settings here, day mode and night mode. I don't use it because I use the timer on the Swift control panel. Settings for, don't need to touch those. Sensor calibration is the one you may want to be interested in, or it's one of the ones you could be interested in, and that is for setting the offset, as I said earlier. So if you find that the temperature is not quite right, you can adjust the indoor setting and the outdoor setting. Now, interestingly enough, the outdoor setting doesn't really do anything on the Alde. It's just to give you an indication, if you've got an outdoor sensor, which I haven't, what the temperature actually is. So like I say, the only one you need to adjust would possibly be the indoor sensor, and you might want to play with that occasionally just to see if you can get the temperature right, and you might need another thermostat to give you a double check. I mean, if I get my thermostat again, it does seem to take a bit of time to settle down. It's now saying it's 14.7, so you could play about with this. I find it's round about 3 degrees or 2.5 seems to be about right. The other setting on the Alde you might want to look at is the display. There's settings for brightness on here. So we've got a brightness setting. You can have it a low, which looks like that. You can have it medium, which is the one I tend to use, or you can have it high, which doesn't really look any different, does it? But at night, this is the display you might want to change, or you might want to have a little play with. If the screen is bothering you, I've got it on inverted. Normal looks like that, so that's a bit brighter. Display it. I've got it, like I say, I normally leave it on inverted, but dark, you look at this and it doesn't look any different really, but what happens is after 30 seconds that display goes off. So I'll leave it for 30 seconds. There we go, the display's gone off. To get it back on, you touch the screen. I prefer it, as I said, on the inverted setting with it on medium brightness. That way the display stays on. Because if the display goes off, you might think the heating's gone off. The other setting you might want to look at, back into settings, and again we're on page 2 of 3, is sound. And it's really whether you want this to beep when you operate the buttons. I'm not sure why you'd want to change the sound off, because if something goes wrong you need a notification. So that's that. You've got another setting there for language. Sometimes see people saying it's gone into French or something. That's where you change it. Service information gives you sort of things that you might want to tell Alde support if something goes wrong. System configuration, again, you shouldn't need to change all of that. All that is preset, and a lot of it is set by what additions you've got. And one addition we're going to be adding soon is an aqua clear, and we would simply say it's installed once it's installed on there. And the other one there is 2 zone mode. It's a little bit confusing because we've got 2 thermostats, but we haven't got 2 zone mode on this fan. There's single zone, but with 2 temperature sensors. And if you need to reset it at all, press the reset button there. Other than that, you shouldn't need to touch that very much at all. Well, I hope you found that video useful. If you did, give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. We'll bring you some more hints and tips and helpful videos, hopefully. And if you've got any questions about the heating, particularly to do with the Swift control panel and the Alde heating, then do let us know. And if you've got any tips yourself, anything I might have missed or you think might be useful, do let us know, and that would be good. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye then.